rumor is that Turning Point Action was missing $10 million, and Turning Point Action actually built a backdoor. It has connections to Erika's mother. That is just a fact.
8 days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, he asked for a Doge-like assessment on TPUSA's financials and operations. He was then killed. Erika Kirk was then announced as the CEO within a week. This never happened.
Candace Owens is now accusing Erika Kirk's own mother of allegedly stealing $10 million from TPUSA, and this situation just keeps getting darker by the minute. At first, people thought the drama inside Turning Point was just about leadership struggles following Charlie Kirk's passing, but now we're talking allegations of missing money, cover-ups, fake AI audio, donor panic, and claims that Charlie himself was beginning to suspect people close to him before he passed. The conservative movement online is basically in full civil war mode right now. Candace is no longer throwing small jabs at Erika Kirk, she's going all the way in. She's publicly claiming that millions of dollars connected to Turning Point Action allegedly disappeared. And according to her, that money didn't just vanish into thin air. She believes it ended up directly in the hands of people extremely close to Erika.
I think that they probably built a lot of mechanisms, and again, I'm speculating here, but with a lot of pieces of people who were at Turning Point USA, who are no longer at Turning Point USA, saying that that was where the money was missing from. And if it was Turning Point Action, then there would be a direct tie to Lori Franzfei. It would have created a serious kerfluffle in his relationship with his wife if he found out something about Lori Franzfei.
We're talking about Erika Kirk's own mother allegedly walking away with the funds, while Erika allegedly helped cover the whole thing up behind the scenes. Now, these are allegations, and no confirmed public evidence has been presented yet. But here's why people are losing their minds over this. Candace keeps connecting the story back to something Charlie Kirk was allegedly pushing for before his passing: a Doge-style financial audit inside TPUSA. Once you start lining up the rumors, people online say the timeline starts looking very suspicious. Candace claims Erika's mother allegedly had access to donor finances connected to Turning Point Action that she never should have had. And while supporters believe they were donating to save the country, millions were allegedly being quietly redirected elsewhere completely behind the scenes. If true, this would completely destroy trust inside the organization. People who donate to political movements expect that money to go toward events, outreach, campaigning, and real activism, not allegedly end up in personal accounts connected to family members. Now, one thing Candace keeps bringing up is Erika's CBS interview, where Erika publicly asked people to stop spreading theories and speculation following Charlie's passing. But Candace isn't buying it. According to Candace,
huge amount of money on it. She is building her business off of these lies. What do you want to say to her and the other people that are putting these lies out into the world right now?
Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.
Erika isn't just protecting Charlie's legacy, she's allegedly protecting the people around her too. Not everyone believes Candace though. A lot of people think she's gone way too far this time. One comment that went viral said, "She's working overtime on trying to bring down and take a dump on Charlie Kirk's legacy, on her 28th part of getting absolutely nowhere. Accused 20 different people, countries, religions, and not a single evidence of anything, a judge would laugh in her face." And honestly, that's the biggest credibility problem Candace is facing right now. But Candace's supporters immediately point back to the Doge audit situation. Apparently, in Charlie's final weeks, he became seriously interested in running a Department of Government efficiency-style audit internally at TPUSA. And this is where things start spiraling fast, because people are asking, why would Charlie suddenly want to aggressively audit his own organization if everything was perfectly fine? You don't randomly decide to tear through financial records unless something already feels deeply off. According to online speculation, Charlie allegedly started questioning where donor money was actually going compared to the real impact the organization was making publicly. Basically, some people believe Charlie noticed the numbers just weren't adding up.
8 days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, he asked for a Doge-like assessment on TPUSA's financials and operations. He was then killed. Erika Kirk was then announced as the CEO within a week. This never happened. I appointed myself head of Doge to figure out what would they have found if they actually did this audit. And it's a lot, and it's dark.
Huge donations were flowing in, but allegedly the results, events, and overall growth of the organization weren't fully reflecting that level of money anymore. That's exactly why people think Charlie may have quietly started suspecting something was seriously wrong from the inside. Now, this is where another name enters the conversation, Tyler Boyer. His name keeps appearing in almost every major theory surrounding TPUSA lately. Online speculation has built this massive narrative that Erika and Tyler may have known each other long before she ever officially entered Charlie's life. One viral comment said, "It always has something to do with Tyler Boyer. They act like he and Erika didn't know each other before she met Charlie. I believe he set her up with Charlie and gave her all the answers for her to pretend her way into his life." Obviously, that's pure online speculation, but people are running with it hard because the theories around Erika have gotten absolutely wild. Some people genuinely believe she was strategically placed in Charlie's circle from the very beginning. Candace's audience is now treating this entire situation like some giant political conspiracy thriller. According to these theories, once Charlie allegedly started growing suspicious and pushed for that Doge-style audit,
I don't know much about the story of how Tyler met Charlie Kirk, and I now desperately wish that I remember, I could remember what Charlie told me about that. How did they get linked up? And I felt that me asking Erika that question, she might be able to provide a lot of insights to who Tyler Boyer was during the time he was with Charlie Kirk, why, maybe even before he was with Charlie Kirk, and why he got involved with Charlie Kirk. And of course, as we know, Erika knew Tyler for years before her and Charlie began dating.
he suddenly became a problem for the very people surrounding him. And that creates another deeply uncomfortable question people keep raising online. If Charlie truly suspected financial issues involving people close to Erika, what exactly was he planning to do about it? According to Candace's theory, Charlie allegedly wanted to handle it quietly through internal audits rather than trigger a very public scandal involving his own wife and her family. But then, right after his passing, people noticed the entire Doge audit conversation vanished overnight, and that's exactly why the internet keeps spiraling out of control. Critics are asking the hard question if accountability was truly important to the organization. Why completely abandon the audit idea the moment Charlie was gone? Supporters of Erika see things very differently, though. They believe Candace is weaponizing grief and chaos simply because she lost her influence inside the organization. One comment put it bluntly, "Nothing Candace has ever released, not once, not ever, has been a bombshell." Absolutely anyone with any amount of logic or critical thinking skills knows that at this point. People are deeply divided right now. One side sees Candace as exposing corruption nobody else dares to touch. The other side sees her as publicly spiraling, throwing increasingly extreme accusations at people who are still grieving.
But we have a great board, and God forbid if something happens, they'll figure it out. I appoint my wife to run Turning Point USA if something happens to me. Erika would do a great job. I appoint my wife to run Turning Point USA if something happens to me. Erika would do a great job. I appoint my wife to run Turning Point USA if something happens to me. Erika would do a great job.
But honestly, the AI voice allegations are what pushed this entire story into a completely different stratosphere. Candace started talking about something she called Charlie GPT, and people online absolutely lost it after hearing that. According to Candace, an insider allegedly told her that AI-generated voice technology may have been used internally to mimic Charlie's voice in organizational content and donor materials. That theory alone sent people into a frenzy because it immediately made people question whether the viral audio clip supposedly naming Erika as successor was even real in the first place. And honestly, think about how deeply disturbing that would be if true. If organizations can manufacture fake leadership audio using AI to influence donors and shape succession narratives, then suddenly nobody can trust what they're seeing or hearing anymore. But here's the thing, and this part is absolutely critical. Candace still hasn't publicly shown direct proof confirming that audio was fake. And that's exactly why the entire internet feels completely stuck in this massive he said, she said war right now. Nobody can move forward. Nobody can fully trust what they're hearing. And nobody seems willing to back down either. TPUSA says everything is fine. Erika says she's focused on honoring Charlie's legacy. Candace says corruption is being buried deep underground, and meanwhile, supporters online are desperately trying to figure out who is actually telling the truth. It's like watching three completely different movies playing at the same time, and somehow you're supposed to figure out which one is real. And what makes this even more intense is the fact that the longer this drags on without hard evidence, the more dangerous it becomes for everyone involved. Because when serious allegations stay unresolved this long, people stop waiting for facts and start building their own conclusions. And once the internet builds a narrative, it is almost impossible to tear it back down. But regardless of who ends up being right, this situation is already doing serious damage to the movement. People donating money and supporting causes do not want to hear conversations about missing millions, fake AI voices, leadership cover-ups, and internal betrayal. Donors want to feel like their money means something. They want to feel like their contributions are going toward real change, real events, real impact, not allegedly disappearing into someone's personal orbit while the public gets fed a carefully polished story about legacy and unity. And that trust, once it cracks, is incredibly hard to rebuild. Because political donors are not naive. These are people who gave money because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They sacrificed their own dollars because they thought it would matter. So when allegations like this start floating around, whether proven or not, a huge chunk of those donors quietly close their wallets and never come back. That is the real damage happening right now. And it is happening in real time whether anyone inside TPUSA wants to admit it or not. Now, let's talk about the AI voice angle a little deeper, because this part of the story genuinely deserves more attention than it's getting. Candace's Charlie GPT theory isn't just some wild internet rumor she pulled from nowhere. The reason it hits so hard is because AI voice cloning technology is completely real, widely available, and frankly terrifying in the wrong hands. We are living in a moment where you can feed a few hours of someone's voice into a program and generate entirely new audio of them saying things they never actually said. And that's not science fiction that is happening right now across industries, politics, and media. So when Candace raised the possibility that AI-generated audio may have been used inside TPUSA to create or shape leadership narratives, people didn't laugh it off. They panicked. Because the uncomfortable truth is that if a major political organization were to use AI voice technology to simulate a founder's instructions, donor appeals, or succession decisions, most people would never even know it happened. The average supporter listening to an audio clip isn't running it through a forensic audio lab. They hear the voice, they recognize it, and they believe it. That's just human nature. And that's what makes the GPT theory so deeply unsettling, regardless of whether it turns out to be true or false. It forced people to ask a question they had never seriously considered before. How do we verify authenticity in a world where voice and video can be manufactured on a laptop? This isn't just a TPUSA problem. This is a civilization-level problem that this situation accidentally put a massive spotlight on. But let's bring it back to the core of what's happening here, because there are really three separate battles running at the same time right now, and people keep mixing them all together. First, there is the financial battle, the allegations about missing donor money, access to accounts that allegedly shouldn't have existed, and whether a Doge-style audit would have exposed something serious. Second, there is the legacy battle, the fight over who gets to control Charlie Kirk's story, his organization, and ultimately his influence going forward. And third, there is the credibility battle, the very public war between Candace Owens and TPUSA leadership over who the conservative movement should actually believe. And here's the wild part, all three of these battles are feeding each other simultaneously. The financial allegations give Candace's credibility battle more fuel. The legacy battle gives Erika's defenders more emotional ammunition to push back. And the credibility battle makes it nearly impossible for anyone to evaluate the financial allegations fairly, because everything has become so deeply personal and political at this point. Now, Candace's supporters will tell you that this is exactly what happens when someone gets too close to the truth. They'll say the pushback she's receiving, the mockery, the viral comments calling her desperate and evidence-free, all of that is exactly what powerful institutions do when they feel cornered. They don't address the specific claims. They attack the person making them. They make the messenger the story so nobody focuses on the actual message. And look, that argument has real historical weight behind it. There are plenty of cases where whistleblowers were dragged through the mud publicly while serious corruption was quietly happening behind closed doors. The pattern is familiar: discredit, deflect, delay, and hope the story eventually dies on its own. But on the other side, Erika's defenders have an equally valid point. Because here's the reality: if you are going to make allegations this serious, this specific, and this damaging, the burden of proof matters enormously. You cannot publicly accuse someone's mother of stealing $10 million, claim AI voice technology was used to fake a dead man's voice, and suggest a cover-up involving multiple people inside a major organization and then just not show receipts. At some point, the severity of the claim demands an equal level of evidence. And right now, that evidence has not been placed in front of the public in a clear, verifiable way. That's not defending corruption. That's just basic fairness. And honestly, that tension between the seriousness of the allegations and the current lack of verified public proof is exactly why this situation feels so impossible to resolve right now, because people are being asked to choose a side before the full picture exists. And choosing a side in that environment almost always leads people to emotional conclusions rather than rational ones. Which means even if hard evidence eventually does surface, a huge portion of people will have already locked in their opinions based purely on loyalty, vibes, and whatever content algorithm kept feeding them over the past few weeks. Let's also be real about something that nobody seems to want to say out loud. This entire situation is happening inside a movement that built a massive portion of its identity around accountability, exposing corruption, and demanding transparency from institutions. And now that same movement is publicly fractured over allegations of corruption and a lack of transparency happening allegedly within its own walls. That irony is not lost on people, and it is giving critics of the conservative movement enormous amounts of material to work with right now. Because if the loudest voices for accountability cannot hold their own house accountable, or at the very least cannot agree on a transparent, fair process for investigating serious internal allegations, then what exactly is the movement actually standing for? That question is uncomfortable, but it is completely legitimate. And the longer this drags on without resolution, the louder that question gets. Now, some people online are suggesting that the only way this situation ever gets properly resolved is if an independent, third-party financial audit of TPUSA is conducted and made publicly available. Not an internal review, not a statement from leadership saying everything checks out. An actual independent audit with real numbers, real paper trails, and real transparency. Because at this point, a statement from either side carries almost zero credibility with the other side's supporters. And interestingly, that's almost exactly what Candace claims Charlie himself was allegedly moving toward before his passing. Which, if true, would mean the most logical resolution to this entire crisis is the very thing that allegedly got buried after he was gone. And that circular reality is precisely why people online refuse to let this story die. There's also a much bigger conversation quietly building underneath all of this about what happens to major political organizations when their founding figure suddenly disappears. Because TPUSA without Charlie Kirk is an entirely different animal than TPUSA with Charlie Kirk. He was the engine, he was the brand, he was the reason millions of people donated, showed up, and stayed loyal. And when a personality-driven organization loses its central personality, that suddenly there is always a brutal scramble for control that follows. Always. Power vacuums in political movements are not new. They happen every time a major figure exits, whether through passing, scandal, or retirement. And the people left behind almost always end up in exactly the kind of messy, public, emotionally charged fight we are watching unfold right now. The difference is that social media means we get to watch every single ugly moment of it in real time, and people with platforms and audiences can pour gasoline on every single development as it happens. And that brings us right back to Candace. Because whatever you think about her methods, her evidence, or her motivations, she has an enormous platform and she is clearly not slowing down. Every video she drops gets millions of eyes on it. Every allegation she makes forces TPUSA to respond in some way, even if that response is silence. And in today's media environment, silence from an organization facing serious public allegations almost always reads as guilt to the people already suspicious of them. So where does this actually go from here? Honestly, there are really only a few possible outcomes. Either Candace eventually surfaces documented, verifiable evidence that forces a serious public reckoning inside TPUSA, or the allegations quietly fade without resolution and TPUSA moves forward under Erika's leadership while Candace's credibility takes a lasting hit. Or, and this is the outcome people seem to be sleeping on, some kind of legal action enters the picture, which would force evidence and testimony into a formal setting where vibes and social media influence carry absolutely no weight. Any one of those outcomes reshapes the conservative movement in a significant way. And none of them are clean. None of them leave everyone looking good. and none of them bring back the stability and unity that existed before all of this exploded publicly. But right now, in this moment, this situation has completely split people online, and the debate is getting louder by the day. So I genuinely want to know what you think about all of this. Do you think Candace Owens is exposing something real happening behind the scenes at TPUSA? Or do you think these accusations are going way too far without solid, verified evidence to back them up? And here's the big one. Do you think the missing money, the Doge audit, and the AI voice theories are all connected pieces of the same puzzle? Or has the internet just gone full conspiracy mode and lost the plot entirely at this point? Drop everything you're thinking in the comments below because honestly, this story is nowhere near over, and your perspective actually matters in a conversation this divided. If this breakdown had you hooked from start to finish, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Subscribe so you never miss the moment things get this wild again. Share this with someone in your circle who needs to see exactly what is going on inside TPUSA right now. And drop your hottest take in the comments because I read every single one. See you on the next one!